Everybody, we're so excited to be here with you this afternoon, and thank you for joining us. We haven't had a chance to introduce our other friend and colleague, Erin Amy, so we'll have her introduce herself briefly.
Hi, I'm Erin Amy. I work at IU5 as a training and technical assistance consultant in literacy and MTSS here in Erie, Pennsylvania, on the way west side of the state. So happy to be with you.
And the three of us do co-present often, so we're excited to be with you again. Dr. Eisenberg now, we stole her from her school district, so she is now a patent consultant with us at Patent Harrisburg. We're so excited about that. And Tambra introduced me briefly as well. So let's get started. We're going to have as our friend Anita Archer would say, a perky pace with you this afternoon. So we are focusing on getting started in structured literacy in grades 3 to 5. So structured literacy, highly explicit, systematic instruction and teaching, and language and literacy. These components focus on both foundational skills and those higher level language skills as well. And over the past decade, it's become a really important buzzword in the field, but primarily the focus has been on the early. And as Erin and Tamara and I and the rest of our colleagues have been working in school districts across our state and across the nation, what we've been hearing is a resounding, what about the big kids? Honestly, lots and lots and lots of feedback about the need for structured literacy and language in the upper elementary grades, middle school, and high school. And today our focus is the upper elementary grades. But really, we're excited to get started to talk about structured literacy in grades 3 to 5, because students we know are engaged in more increasingly complex text as they go up through the grade levels, and they need to access and own that content and that language. And today we're going to focus on some small shifts, 4 of them, that you can engage in your classrooms to embed structured literacy in your classroom. So we know small shifts sometimes can make a big, big difference. So here we go. And we like that little, you can do it, right? Okay, so you'll see some icons throughout the sessions. You'll see a little speech bubble there. That's where we're going to have you chat. We have opened the chat. There'll be some polls for you to engage in. When you see that little note jotting, that means wherever you are, we hope that you take a moment to jot and take notes. The chatting is for you wherever you are. Hopefully you're with somebody. If not, we always say, well, maybe your pet or a plant or something. You can chat with them. And then when you see that open book with the icon with the light bulb, it means there's embedded teaching tips, right? But Tambra, Erin, and I strongly believe that learning and growing with teachers and leaders is always in service of our kids. We continue our own professional learning. As teachers, we have that moral responsibility to continue learning because we serve kids, right? So this is a safe space. We want you to be engaged. That's why we've opened that chat. And we know that some of you, many of you right now are joining us live, but we are curating nearly every single one of the 71 presentations for the Literacy Symposium. So a number of you will be watching a recording. Our symposiums over the last several times have had over 300,000 views. So we know people will be watching recording as well. So we hope that you have the opportunity to make connections wherever you are and whenever you're watching this presentation. All right. So we just want to kind of get a gauge for where people are that are attending live with their knowledge of structured literacy. I love these little graphics that Erin put on our slide. A noob means you're a newbie, and a pro. Gosh, we wish we could unmute and have you join us. So we're going to ask you in terms of a Likert scale from a 1 to a 4. 1 would be I'm a newbie. I'm just learning about structured literacy. 4 being I'm pretty much a pro here. And of course, 2 and 3 would be within that range. You're learning about structured literacy. So Erin has opened the poll, and Erin, you'll let us know when you're going to close it. But thank you so much for participating. Gosh, lots and lots and lots of people participating. Thank you. And it looks, as you can likely see too, we have some noobs, but pretty much a lot of you are already have engaged in learning about structured literacy. Twos and threes are the majority of the responses, and we have some pros in here. So we wish we could, we wish we could have you join us on the pro end here too. So thank you so much for participating in that. So yeah, so you have a lot to attach to already. So we also have some questions because we want to really surface why focus on grades 3 to 5. And so question 1 is, which of the following are considered off-track indicators for 6th graders that significantly reduces their chances of graduating on time? So you can select all that apply. What do you think are the attributes that impact students graduating? And we want to make sure, of course, all our students graduate, but what are the impact? What are the contributors to that? What do you think? So Aaron's opening that up. And you can vote, of course, for more than one. That contributors with that morpheme S probably gave you that indication there's more than one contributor. And great job having people share. There you go. Thank you so much. Just wait another moment or so. And actually today we're going to talk about ABCs, and actually in 2 areas. And in this case, there are the ABCs of contributors to not graduating. They are attendance. So when we have students who are attending less than 85% of the time in school, you know, when we have behaviors that are impacting students, and then C, course grades. If we have a failing grade in a course in math or English arts, those ABCs, look out for those. They are indicators that we're at risk for not graduating. So that's our first indicator. We want to get to our kids early and ensure that they're attending school, that we're supporting them and positive behaviors, and then we're keeping track of those course grades to ensure that they are doing well and they're not failing, right? And research indicates that students at risk for dropping out can be identified as early as 6th grade. According to studies, what percentage of chance of graduating on time do 6th graders have if they display just one off-track indicator? And Aaron, you can see that indicated there. I mean, look at that percentage, right? If just one of those ABCs, attendance, behavior, or course grades, are off track, students in 6th grade have a 15 to 25% chance of graduating, right, on time. So those are really important indicators that we want to keep our eye on. We know how important those intermediate and upper elementary grades, those middle school grades are, and that's why we're focusing on those grade levels. So thanks so much. Yeah, 6th graders who just one of those. All right, so we're very fortunate in our country to have the Institute of Education Sciences, which is our research entity at the federal level that offers all kinds of wonderful resources to teachers, and they're based on evidence. How lucky are we there? This is a recent one for grade levels for preventing student failure and interventions, focusing on grades 4 to 9, and they have recommendations to support what we should be doing in our classrooms in those grade levels. And you can see those practice recommendations. And again, they're on a continuum of strong, moderate, and minimal evidence for impacting, because one of the most precious things that we have, besides our students, of course, and our colleagues, is our time in classrooms. So we want to be engaged in those things that are most effective and have strong evidence for making a difference for student learning. And of course, we called through the research as well when we were planning this presentation, and we have aligned our suggestions and recommendations to you today based on these recommendations. And as you can see, to the left are some of the areas that we're going to focus on this afternoon with reading protocols. We're going to have another ABC focusing on knowledge, A meaning assessment and previewing for students, B meaning building, and C meaning content and content for students and classification. We are going to focus on routines for vocabulary, because we know as students engage in more complex text, the vocabulary becomes much more rich, much more robust. and domain specific. So vocabulary routines are critically important in every single domain, social studies, science, math, gym, everywhere kids go. They're bathed in very rich, robust words. So we want to make sure we're teaching them, and that when we're engaging in text, we are coming to a summary or a gist of what we've learned. And then text sets. Aaron is going to go deeper into the text sets because we want to ensure that kids are engaging with really complex text, and we're scaffolding that as we go up, so they are engaging in those complex texts. So we will be engaged in stretching kids and engaged text. But as you can see, they align to these evidence-based practices from this recent IES guide. So we're going to share some of those with you today too. So research to practice, right? So here are the big ideas for our presentation today. We are, since it's our focus is structured literacy, we're going to define it, right? We're going to talk about the definition of structured literacy. We're going to talk about the elements that contribute to comprehension. As we know, we're always supporting students in comprehending what they listen to and what they read. And as they move up into these upper grade levels, you know, increasingly they are the ones doing all of the reading. So what is contributing to reading comprehension, reading in print? And again, we're going to give you 4 ways to start that process of structured literacy in your classrooms. And how are we going to do that? We're going to focus on those ABCs. That's right over there in that nice big orange box. We're going to help you build knowledge for students, right? So that they can engage in those ABCs. They need to do that by putting miles on the page, right? Once students can read words, and we want to make sure that they can read those words accurately and automatically. It's all about wide and deep learning. They need to get the miles on the page to build background knowledge, that world knowledge attached to that word knowledge that they have, so that they can read these rich, complex texts, right? And of course, those complex texts are replete with lots of really rich, robust, multi-syllabic words. And oftentimes when students get into 3rd through 5th grade, they get afraid of those big words, those multi-syllabic words. So we want to make sure that we have routines for teaching multi-syllabic words for both attacking them and word knowledge, but also what do those words mean? So increasingly, of course, morphology will be a focus, as it should be in the early grades, but increasingly more so in these upper grades. And writing and reading, the reciprocal relationships. What we read, we should be writing about, and we should be writing about what we read. They're reciprocal. And so we're going to talk about a routine for getting the gist, for rehearsal around the oral part of that summarization, the gist of what we've read, and then writing about what we've read. So those are the big 4 that are going to be the focus for this afternoon. All right. So that's your roadmap. All right. So in Pennsylvania and many other states, there has been a big push, yay, for structured literacy. We actually just had another Senate Bill 801 pass just yesterday, right? But in Pennsylvania, we are focused on structured literacy. If you were with us, we would have you reading the bolded statements because we like to have interaction there, right? But when we think about structured literacy, we think about it as being systematic. That means it has a scope and sequence that's logical from least complex to most complex. And in cases of word recognition too, most frequent to least frequent, right? So there's a system to it. It's not haphazard. It's explicit instruction, which means it's unambiguous, right? We're not letting kids discover unknown things when they're novices or they're strugglers. It's very explicit. It's unambiguous, right? So we're providing a strong foundation in the foundational skills in language, the written language, how it's organized, its orthography, its morphology, its phonology, and how those systems integrate. So language is literacy. Literacy is language. They are synonymous. So when we think about structured literacy, the what of structured literacy is language, right? So there's this integration. We're not things as sometimes we've heard Emily Hanford say about a phonics patch or a morphology patch. We're not patching them in isolation. We're integrating these systems as we teach them, right? And, oh, this is your slide, Erin. I'm going to stop talking. There you go, Erin. Go, go, go.
She's doing a fantastic job. You can tell we're all passionate about this, right?
Yep.
So I think bringing all of these ideas together, the integration piece is really important so that we're not supplanting other things like the standards, right? So we think about the standards as being listening, speaking, reading, spelling, and writing, all of those essential pieces of foundational skills and those language systems. And so we have the PA core standards on SAS, right? And the standards describe what students should know and be able to do in core academic subjects at each grade level. And they serve as goals, right, for student learning. Where are we going? What are the guideposts for classroom instruction? And it's a framework for assessment. So we think about that as, oh, it wants to take me to SAS. Hold on, we're getting back here. All right. We think about that as, right, the student in front of us. The PA structured literacy competencies, if you don't know this document, definitely take a look at that in our Wakelet. It contains the content that teachers need to know about teaching the language structures, most of which we haven't really had a lot of instruction in our pre-coursework. So these are the structures of English. This document contains the knowledge and skills that all teachers of reading should possess to teach all students to read proficiently. And that statement comes through the International Dyslexia Association. And that is where that core document came from. So we have student focused and we have teacher focused. And then as Pam was talking, we have these systems of language. And so we want to introduce you, if you don't already know, if you're not the expert already. The definition, right, goes on to say that structured literacy emphasizes the structure of language across speech sound systems, which is phonology, right? You can read these along with me. Having oral rehearsal is helpful for vocabulary learning. The writing system, which is orthography. The structure of sentences is syntax. And the relationship among words is semantics. We kind of have two S's there. And then the meaningful parts of words are morphology. So this is the organization of spoken and written discourse. So the POSSUM acronym helps us to keep those language systems organized for us. So we're going to be integrating that throughout our presentation today. And so we can have this little guy as our friend and as a reminder that language, right, is running through all of this literacy instruction. The Pennsylvania Structured Literacy competencies were adapted from the knowledge and practice standards for the teachers of reading from IDA in 2018. And these were used with permission to create the Pennsylvania competencies. So we have different sections of that document that are relevant for different certification areas in Pennsylvania. And you can check out all those certifications in the document. So the PA core standards and the structured literacy competencies, right, incorporate those systems of English. POSSUM is the what of structured literacy, and the how, right, is integrated into the definition. You can say it with me: systematic and explicit instruction. And we could have, right, an entire course, a semester long or unit of study on just what is explicit instruction. So you just get a quick overview today. So hopefully that helps you think about where we're headed with structured literacy.
Yeah, and for explicit instruction, we know we default to our colleague and the master teacher of the world, Anita Archer, right? And so there are also graphics. I think whenever we have complex knowledge, we often build models or graphics or infographics to convey these things. And so this is an infographic from the International Dyslexia Association that conveys what structured literacy is. And again, what you're seeing is the what and the how, right, about structured literacy. So again, you see the language systems in the first circle: phonology, the sound symbols, you know, phonics and syllables, how our language is represented in written form, morphology, the meaningful units, syntax, how our language is organized in sentences for meaning, and then semantics, the vocabulary, the meaningful parts of our language. And then it's integration with the how, right? Systematic, cumulative, explicit, and diagnostic, right? So what I want you to really notice in these graphics is the way they are overlapping, right? And so we talked about the integration of these things that are not siloed. We're not doing phonemic awareness and now we're going to phonics and now we're going to syntax. We're integrating all these things because that's how we learn as humans. We categorize things and we integrate them. So that's what you can see in this graphic, right? And then recently IDA updated their graphic, their infographic related to structural literacy. And what do you see? You see the who up the top, you see an integrated system, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 that are integrated with language. That's the what. Again, you see that to the left, you see all our language systems. That's the content. That's what we should be teaching every single day. And then the how, right over to the right, right? The principles of effective instruction based on decades and decades of research. And then we have that nice circle again, where we're integrating both the what and the how. And the why is the science of reading and the research for many decades that it rests upon. So if you're new, if you're one of those newbies or a two, these are really wonderful graphics to kind of ground your professional learning and your ongoing conversation about structured literacy. So they're on the Wakelet for you to make it easy. So we just want to give you some tools to take back. And of course, with explicit instruction, if you were with our friend Anita, she was, there's two components, big ideas, the design and the delivery, right? So you might think of the design as we're planning for instruction in an I do, we do, you do manner, gradual release of responsibility, where the teacher demonstrates and provides a model. There's guided practice with ongoing feedback and then checking for understanding. But the I do, we do, you do might often be I do, I do, I do, I do, we do, we do, we do, we do, we do, we do, you do with the partner, you do with the partner, you do with the partner, you do, right? So the goal is this gradual release of responsibility and lots and lots and lots of practice so that students move to mastery. And how is it delivered? Very interactively. I say something as a teacher, you say something, student. I say something, you say something. I write something, you write something. Explicit instruction is very, very, very engaging and very interactive with lots of ongoing feedback that the teacher is getting. So no hand raising, nope. Lots of kids responding all at once, whiteboards, core responding, so that the teacher has in the moment information to inform their instruction. And it's always a perky pace. No time to misbehave, right? Behaviors go down, learning goes up, right? So explicit instruction is the vehicle for structured literacy, right? And part of that is instructional routines. And we're going to be sharing some of those with you today, right? We want to reduce the cognitive load so students can focus on the content learning, not how is the teacher teaching, right? We do have on the Wakelet as well, a video from Anita Archer. She clearly explains the when of explicit instruction, right? We know that all students benefit from explicit instruction, all benefit and harms none. The research is very strong on that. But when is the most appropriate time for explicit instruction? When you're a novice learner, when you're learning something new, and when you're a struggler, right? You need very, very direct explicit instruction so that you can learn the content. Anita always says, if you would have discovered it, but we don't. We need explicit instruction. We don't move to discovery until we've acquired a lot of knowledge through explicit instruction and lots of skills. So it's a question of when. It's not drill and kill, it's drill and skill, right? So that video that's on the Wakelet is well worth it. And so what about structural literacy? What are those big ideas? These are the big ideas of the standards of the International Dyslexia Association, the knowledge and practice standards. If you want to know what you should know and be able to do as a teacher of structured literacy, this is your go-to. And this is like the big picture topics for the knowledge and practices that you need. And of course, we were fortunate in Pennsylvania to adopt and adapt those standards for structural literacy in Pennsylvania, as many other states have as well. And as Erin mentioned earlier, we also have the competencies. That's the do part of the knowledge and practice standards, and she's going to go to that slide just in just a so you can see that. And what did we align our presentation to? Oh, those competencies, of course, right? And we want to align to evidence and to standards. And so our explicit vocabulary routine is aligned to standards, as well as the ABCs that we're going to be talking about as well, and as each of them are. So we're aligning our presentation to evidence and standards. I just want to let you know you're on firm ground here, okay? All right, so what is comprehension where you are? If you can grab a quick piece of paper or just in your head, be thinking about what you think of as when someone asks you, well, what is comprehension, right? And we know from our friend Anita Archer, and you've probably heard this quote, she often says, there's no comprehension strategy strong enough to overcome the fact that you can't read the words, right? We know that we need to be able to read words accurately and automatically, and we need to know what they mean. So what is comprehension? In our country for a while, the definition was the ability to read a simple sentence, and that's all it was. But recently it's been updated to state this. The country's current definition of literacy is the ability to use printed and written information to function in society, to achieve one's goals, and to develop one's knowledge and potential, right? So a good place for us to start when we start thinking about comprehension, to use knowledge so that we can gain knowledge and be successful as citizens and humans, right, in our country. That's what we're shooting for our kids. All right, so I hope you probably put something down similar to that. I bet you did. So as I said earlier, kids, as they move up in the grade levels, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. You're here, you're likely teach students in these grade levels or support them in intervention. They come up against really complex, robust words, multisyllabic, multimorphemic words, right? So what do you notice? You could just do a quick thing in the chat. What do you notice about these words? And then you guys can put that in there while Erin brings up the next part. But I guess I'm thinking you're going to write something similar to what she's going to put up here in just a moment. What are you seeing in there, Erin?
Nothing yet. They're typing.
Yeah, they're thinking. Lots of suffixes. Yeah. Multisyllabic, morphemes. Yes. Yeah. And sometimes when kids see words like this, they freeze, right? Those single syllable words, they're like, I got that. But boy, when they start seeing words like abundance or agriculture, they get scared. And these are the kinds of words that kids are seeing, right? Multisyllabic, rare words, words that they're typically not hearing in spoken language. It's academic language that they see in writing. Yep. And Erin, just like Erin said, they need word check skills, right? So they're always going to need, when we think about the simple view of reading, the ability to read words accurately and automatically and to know what they mean. There is one large assumption, and this comes from a Pennsylvania researcher that you may know, Charles Perfetti, right? And I'll give you a moment just to read that. But just to summarize, he's saying, gosh, he was struck by the fact that kids had trouble understanding what they're reading. And oftentimes at this grade level, we say, oh, they have a comprehension problem. But we have to be, yes, go Pitt. We have to be careful to also be looking to see if there's an underlying problem with reading words accurately and automatically, right? So we're always thinking about both ends of the rope and the simple view of reading. They need to be efficient at word reading, and it has a huge impact on their ability to comprehend because they're having to engage in complex text, reading complex text with multisyllabic words, so simultaneously monitoring for meaning and comprehension, right? So we always want to bring that to the forefront, right? We need to be efficient. And yes, it can feel elusive for kids, no doubt about it, right? All right, this is a newer graphic that we saw for the reading rope. It comes from, as you can see, the authors down there, Martin, Sharon Vaughn, Gary Troya, Hank Fine, and Mike Coyne, very esteemed researchers, and it was just recently shared with us at the Secondary Literacy Summit at Patton on May 29th. But what I want you to notice is, of course, how we're shifting over time to a deeper focus. We're always engaged with language from the early grades on. It's mostly oral language where we're getting those robust language and words from in the early grades because kids are not yet reading the kind of words that you saw earlier, but they're moving from this novice reading to fluent to skilled reading through increasingly complex text. And they need to engage in higher cognitive skills and background knowledge, both word knowledge, the ability to decode the words, and world knowledge. What I know about what I'm reading has a profound impact on my ability to comprehend. So we need to make sure that kids can read those words accurately, automatically, but also that from the very beginning, we are building strong oral language, and we continue to do that, but they are engaged in increasingly complex domain-specific text. So we have to be constantly building that world knowledge or that background knowledge as we engage in structural literacy in these grade levels. All right. So I like that graphic. Right. So English is what? English is, and you could put it in the chat if you wanted to, but I bet our pros here are going to say English is this, and it's 5 syllables long. There we go. Yeah, it's a deep orthography for sure. It's complex. That's right. English is very complex. Yep. It's more, ni, So that's the sound structure, right? Where I just broke that apart in syllables, right? It's phonemic, right? So we spell, and our language is built upon sounds. Speech came first, and we're representing it with orthography, with written forms, graphemes, and also with morphemes, right? Morph meaning structure, right? And eem meaning just an individual unit, right? So morpho, now we're going to break it into those morphemes. So morpho, shape, phon, sound, right? Like phonograph, right? Eem meaning that smallest unit, and ik is always going to tell us IC that's an adjective. It's going to describe it. So our language is built on both meaning and sound, right? It's morpho-phonemic. It isn't crazy, very logical, right? But it is a very complex language structure. So it means we need to teach it, right? So very, and I'm going to teach it through Possum, right? All those language systems, that's the what, and then the how is the explicitness diagnostically, cumulatively, right? Okay. And of course, the 5 pillars, you're probably familiar with those from the NRP. And you can see those there. But for this age level, what we want to point your attention to is the RAND report, research and design from 1999 that focused on comprehension and focused in 3 areas. This study found that there's an interaction between the reader, the text, and the task, right? And so they had a heuristic or an infographic to show you what that looks like. So reader, the influence of comprehension is the reader. What does the reader bring to the text? What is the text about? What does the reader know about that? And what is the teacher or the student having to engage in terms of the task that they have set out for them, but all within this social, cultural context of the classroom and the environment. And check out the note taker because you'll see all these graphics there as well. So the RAND heuristic is going to be something that we keep coming back to. All right, so there are some, yes, so they're all interrelated. You see how they're kind of interdependent there. There's a lot of interdependence in this presentation today, right? We're not siloing things. So reader, text, and task, right? So what is reading comprehension according to RAND? It's extracting and constructing meaning simultaneously. It's the interaction with written language with the reader, the text, and the task, right? And that purpose for reading. So this is a great definition for reading comprehension to take back to your schools if you're seeking one, right? This interaction between these 3. So the other thing that's really important to say is we're not teaching comprehension. Comprehension is an outcome. Boy, Hugh Katz is the researcher you want to see if you want to dig deeper into that, but it's not a single construct, right? My brother-in-law comes and visits and I read his research and boy, I have a real hard time comprehending it. I can decode it, but I can't comprehend it because I don't have the background knowledge and the vocabulary is unknown to me, right? So it's not a single construct, right? It's a skill, and it isn't a skill that can be practiced to automaticity. It's an outcome, right? So we're going to focus on that in this presentation. And now I'm turning it over to Erin, and I see how far I'm over. I'm pretty soon here. The Blueprint for Reading Comprehension is a book that we strongly recommend that you engage with if you haven't already, if you're focusing on comprehension. Patton has been doing a book study with and the PLC with Nancy Hennessy and Julia Salomon this year. So lots of great resources there to dig deeper. And this is her focus for teaching comprehension. And challenges, for sure, right? Agree or disagree in the chat. We'll do this real quickly. Students find reading informational text difficult. Agree or disagree. And Erin, I have no doubt they're all going to say agree. No one disagreeing there. Yes, they do, right? More challenging. Content teachers have reduced or eliminated reading as a way of gaining content knowledge. And we see agrees there as well. And last but not least, we got one more. Text reading is portrayed as inferior to hands-on activities and is thus discouraged. And we see that too at times, right? So we're gonna shift you a little bit here today. All right, Erin. I did go over a little bit, so sorry about that. I was as quirky as I could be. So there you
Did
go.
well.
Yeah.
So our goal by the end of high school is that we want college-ready students to acquire about 80,000 words, and that's from Edie Hirsch. And so how do we achieve this goal? We're thinking about Anita Archer, and we've embodied her, and then we're going to all say this together. We're going to pretend that we're off mute in a big room together. We're going to say, we're going to read and write every day in every class. Ready? Read and write every day in every class. And Anita talked about having that as a mantra that was really hung up throughout the whole school, that all teachers were on board with that. And it is a commitment that we have to achieve together. Content area teachers, ELA teachers, everyone who is working with students. So let's get started. We wanted to provide that strong background around structured literacy because there is some misunderstanding in general about what structured literacy is in general and in Pennsylvania. So we're going to get started with our first idea, which is to build knowledge. And if you haven't read this text, these are articles that are in the Wakelet that we've been sharing. Hold off on like digging through the Wakelet. I know it's exciting, but there's a lot in there and it's categorized nice and neatly, hopefully for you. So there are two options to develop students' vocabulary. One, teach students what they need to know. How could we teach 80,000 words though, right? And number two, expect students to learn new words through reading. Right? We have to get kids in text because talking about words is not going to provide them enough vocabulary to be successful in academic settings. So one of the most influential elements that impacts the readers is knowledge that they bring to the text. Their experiential knowledge, their knowledge of vocabulary, and their general, as Pam said, world knowledge. So that's a big mantra, word and world knowledge. So why is background knowledge so crucial? When we think about Rand, we think about that element, right, of the reader. And the five pillars are sort of, a way that we've always thought about teaching the elements, but we also need to think about the interaction of the reader, the text, and the task. So this heuristic brings to light things that we as teachers need to consider. Cognitive capabilities like attention and memory, critical analysis, motivation, right? Is there a purpose for reading? Are kids interested in it? Do they feel self-efficacious as a reader? It's a huge stumbling block when we get into working with older students who've struggled for a long time. Knowledge, right? What do we bring to the table as readers of a text? Do they have topic knowledge? Do they have linguistic and discourse knowledge? Knowledge of strategies, how to keep track of what they think as they're reading. If you've ever worked with an older student who just says, I don't know what I just read, sometimes they don't even know that they should be doing something like thinking while they're reading. So these attributes vary widely across your classroom and between groups. So we're going to focus first on the reader level of world knowledge and we're going to talk about reading text set, so we'll get to that in a minute. So everybody loves a little Jimmy Fallon, right? So why do we need to focus on background knowledge? And we have lots of experts in here, so I'm assuming a lot of you have heard Natalie Wexler speak, and a lot of the knowledge rich, high quality instructional material campaigns that are going on. But having prior knowledge about the topic at hand is like mental Velcro, right? We have to know something to learn something. And so that relevant knowledge that we have as readers gives the words of a text, right, a place to stick, and it makes sense. So those support our comprehension and moves us forward in that reading process. All right, so there's that reader. So how do we build background knowledge? Sharon Vaughn was interviewed and was talking about things that could really, send us down the wrong path. And that would be, how do we teach background knowledge? And what we need to think about is, how do we build it? So we are really going to share some ways that we're going to build knowledge through utilizing complex text, keeping text at the center and not replacing text through other things, but also having a composite way to approach that. Read alouds, activating what kids already know, but sometimes they don't really know anything about what we're trying to teach, and there's not much to activate. And so we do need to build it intentionally and planfully. So there are strategies that can help us build background knowledge with our students, and Pam already introduced us to those ABCs, and we'll get into those a little bit more deeply. So we want to set a purpose for the text, determine the task that students will ask to be performed with that text, and then what strategies throughout, right, before, during, and after reading can lead to building background knowledge on the topic, as well as supporting literacy skills that we find in the standards. So we are going to be looking at ways to do these active planning and preparation. So we can see we have all of you, I would say, are familiar with before, during, and after strategies. And Nancy Hennessy has built in a framework for instructional opportunities and tools that build knowledge. So the ABCs, we can see here, A is activate or assess, B is build, and C is connect and classify. So those steps lead us to that building process. And steps 1 and 2, this is all happening before instruction. Before students read that anchor text, we want to activate any knowledge students have on a topic, or anything that's relevant that they could bring to the table, even if it's not that specific topic. And then we want to evaluate and assess their depth of knowledge, uncover some misconceptions, inaccuracies that students might have. I always joke that someone changed the KWL to what I think I know and not what I know, because that happens. So the teacher has to consider what the reader brings to the text and the demands of the text itself, as well as the context of the content and the rigor of the culminating task. So if you haven't used the RAN to think through planning and implementation of a lesson or a unit, we would definitely consider using that as a guidepost. So during reading is step 3, and that's building our background knowledges through experiences, artifacts, realia, reading sets of texts. And that focus should be keeping students in text while motivating them to continue on, right? So we can have a variety of different ways to do that. Today, we're just going to focus on text sets, but you can see lots of other options there. We also want to be actively teaching strategies so that students can become more strategic. And think about that rope as we become more proficient in our reading skills. And then step 4, that connect and classify, is looking at how will we build, right, what we know in those knowledge networks. Marilyn Adams explains that conscious and deliberate reasoning is no match for the speed or clarity of knowledge-driven understanding. So we need to build those knowledge networks by selecting texts, experiences, and reading comprehension supports to develop schema and knowledge in general. So in the following slides, we've put together an exemplar for you taken from multiple sources. So we have open source resources that have all been done actually on the topic of the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl, ironically. So we have a Louisiana Believes. We also have, there's a lesson in that Reading Comprehension Blueprint book that you can take a look at if you have that text. And so we're going to take a look at this lesson exemplar using the text Out of the Dust. And this is a 6th grade text. So kind of thinking, where do we want kids to be able to get to that vertical alignment? So if you're a 3rd grade teacher, this is what we would expect, right, in a couple of years. So we're thinking through, what does it take to comprehend complex text? Nancy in her blueprint always starts with enduring understandings. So what do we want students to take away from the text? What do we want them to deeply understand as a theme, right, of being part of a human community? So she also, which I really love, she incorporates 2 different types of objectives, a content objective and a literacy objective. And that really speaks to building world knowledge as well as attending to the standards and literacy skills that you need. So in this unit, it's a long unit, 40 days. The enduring understanding is coming of age, right? That transition from childhood to adulthood, all about change, that's change is unavoidable, and that the environment and community can affect us as individuals. And you can see the objectives there, right? So we're looking at comparing and contrasting lives of people of the Great Depression, and we're going to interpret, analyze, and evaluate texts. Okay. So we want to plan with the end in mind. I'm hoping that you have been part of some of those book study experiences on the Reading Comprehension Blueprint, because we certainly can't do that justice in 10 minutes. But the culminating task is here, right? We want them to write a multi-paragraph argumentative essay. Think about all the language skills that go into doing a task like that. So I'm not going to read it just for time's sake, but you can see that that is, the culminating task with that anchored text. And so in order for kids to be able to do that, how do we build in what students need to know? Well, one of those ways is to utilize a unit that's prepared and available for you. I always say try not to recreate the wheel if you don't have to. But building text sets helps us to build knowledge as well as vocabulary through a volume of reading. So text sets can be selected and scaffolded, different variabilities for reading levels. There are some open source resources like I mentioned, as well as thinking through what are some options that students could add voice and choice to. Just some considerations if you're building your own or adding some pieces to a text set. The benefits are that we are supporting vocabulary development as students encounter those same words over time and through different texts, multiple opportunities, right, to practice. And we're also building that knowledge, right, of related texts on the same topic. So the authors will on the same topic will use many of the same words, right? And they'll be able to then read those unfamiliar words more readily. So someone had said that, fluency and automaticity seem elusive, and oftentimes that's because we don't have enough time on a topic to allow kids to become fluent at it. So this is an example of a text set. So to be able to complete that culminating writing task from the Anger text, students have to have a rich understanding and context, right? That outside circle of the heuristic of the Great Depression and the coming of age, right? Which are big ideas, those enduring understandings. So choosing purposeful text is essential to building those critical understandings. So across text, we might encounter words like depression, conservation, drought, in a variety of those texts that we have chosen. So I wanted to share with you that if you're really interested in this idea of text sets, you want to definitely think through and take a look at Dr. Sarah Lupo's work, her framework called the Quad Text Set. I just recently learned from Dr. Amanda Nickerson, and just great resource there. So we're thinking about scaffolding those text sets. This is our target text that our task is related to, and then thinking about selecting other texts. So before reading, we can think about a visual, right? Visual text to build knowledge. So using photography, any kind of art, right, is one of those ideas that are in the ABCs that you could take a look at. We also want to think about accessible text, things that students will enjoy, that will motivate them to continue learning about the topic. Children of the Great Depression, our stories of children, right? Situating them into having an emotional connection and a historical voice of history. And then we can pull nonfiction titles or informational texts to build knowledge and historical context or factual information about the topic. So we know that when students engage with complex text, right, that we've already made them familiar with some of those terms, right, and facts that will give them an on-ramp into those more complex texts. So I was doing a session with high school on structured literacy and thinking through knowing what students in younger grades are learning and how much of a difference it would make, right, when we are introducing the Grapes of Wrath as a 12th grade teacher, knowing that our students have had, right, units centered around Out of the Dust, right, that they've read some memoirs throughout their high school years, Frank McCourt, and I Know What the Caged Bird Sings are all on this idea of the Great Depression and then pulling all those pieces together for kids and consolidating what they know. So we can change their experiences through a really specific organization. So this is from Marilyn Adams' article that we showed earlier. We have to organize our reading in every subject so that each text bootstraps the language and knowledge needed for the next. And gradually students are ready for greater complexity. It's just something to keep in mind when we're thinking about planning. So I'm going to go through these slides pretty quickly, but like I said, these are just examples of things that a teacher could plan ahead of time to make sure that students are learning and building world and word knowledge. So we can activate background knowledge by doing an anticipation guide. We can also, as a teacher, do a read aloud at varying grade levels and then have students read independent texts that they're able to read accurately and automatically. These are just some options for visuals, works of art, videos of fireside chat, things like that, that we bring this content to life. We're also putting in those literacy strategies like note takers, right? Comparing and contrasting, pulling out big ideas from text together and facilitating that. And then that C for classify is, hey, we're going to revisit that anticipation guide and see if your thoughts have changed and what we believe or what we know after we have done this learning. And then our application to after reading would be questions, prompts, or completing that culminating task. So that is just an idea, right, of how we can build knowledge through the ABCs throughout our lesson planning. So on your note taker, I'm hoping that you have that in front of you. If not, you can always download that later. We have live links in the PDF and a space for you to take notes. So this is pulled from recommendation 3, which states that we want to routinely use a set of comprehension building practices to build world and word knowledge.
Okay, so as we talked about earlier, reading comprehension is an iterative process. We continue to build this background knowledge and vocabulary over time through experience with the text. And the reading role is the metaphor for this ongoing process of building, refining a student's process ideas in the text to create their mental model. So the more we get students reading text, the more miles on the page they have with content-rich, complex text, the more they can build this knowledge and vocabulary. So let's just pause for a minute and really think about how much time our students are spending reading while they're in school. So just think about in the 8th grade, how many minutes per hour do you think that students spend reading in class during social studies or ELA period? Okay, so a study by I'll show that on average, students are actually reading less than 4 minutes per hour in those classrooms. So you have a 60-minute ELA block, and we need to think about how many minutes are students actually reading text. Erin, do you want to?
You're good now. Keep going, Tambra.
Okay. So you have a 60-minute ELA block. And so how many minutes are your students actually reading text during that 60 minutes? And thinking about how are we monitoring their reading to make sure that they're actually doing it? Do students have the stamina to get through this selection? And if not, how are we going to help them? So in this section, we're going to talk about different strategies that we could use to get those miles on the page for students. So let's take a second and think about how are you currently engaging students in text? So some common practices that we see in classrooms are popcorn reading. Like we've seen this done a couple of ways. In one way, a student might volunteer to start reading and they read for however long they want. And then when they're ready to stop, they call out popcorn and another student would pick up where they left off. And this process continues. And of course, we have round robin reading, which I think most people are familiar with. But in this practice, students take turns reading a given amount of text. It starts with one student and then the next in order. And so I bet many of you out there had to read round robin style when you were a student. I can remember doing it as a student for sure. And I remember paying really close attention to counting how many paragraphs were there before it was actually my turn, so that I could practice reading so I would be embarrassed or make a mistake. And I was a good reader. So I imagine what that practice is like for our striving readers in our class, right? And then we have volunteers reading. And so this is what Anita Archer calls teach the best and forget the rest. Because who typically volunteers? Strong or striving readers. Strong. And who needs the most practice? Striving readers. So what is everyone else doing while the volunteers reading? Well, we don't know, right? Maybe they're thinking about lunch, maybe they're thinking about after school. So what do all these practices, popcorn reading, round robin reading, and volunteers have in common? They're individuals reading, right? In many instances, one student at a time is reading. So who's getting the miles on the page? One student at a time, and typically it's those high flyers. Okay, I'm going to ask again. I think my sound must be off again, Erin. I don't know if somebody
Every
else
time
wants
you
to
ask
take
me,
over.
it's like, okay, and then it goes out.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
If you don't.
Okay, so there's just a few strategies that we wanted to introduce you to and take a look at those. We have some handouts in the Wakelet that you can take a look at these strategies, but close and close drop are great strategies to use as a class to get through texts. And so a close is I would just have students read one single word. The next word, this is great with adults as well. So if you don't use this, it's one of those strategies that teachers can take right back. If you use this, let us know in the chat, but we would go like this. She has 8 children and sells eggs to, and then they would fill in the word survive. Okay, and usually it's a target word, a vocabulary word that you want kids to get practicing. You can also have them read the end of the sentence, which focuses on syntax development. So a closed drop would be complete the rest of the sentence. So I would read, yet when she can barely afford it, right? And so here's that complex sentence structure. Students would then all read together. She gave your mother 2 hens and helped the crippled woman, said Miguel, right? And so you can do a variety, right? It's always best to do a variety to keep kids attending. but also actively engage in the text, and it brings equity to the table. So these are, right, focusing on vocabulary development, word recognition, and syntactic awareness. So hitting all three of those strands within there. Yes, and you have to see Anita Archer, hopefully in person at some point, doing all of those strategies just seamlessly. So partner reading and paragraph shrinking, kind of our partner intervention, if you haven't heard about that, in grades 3 through 5 is a very effective strategy to make that fluency automatic piece a reality. And so reach out to your IUs, your patent consultants, and we can help you implement those interventions. But what we're going to do is teach students to work together in partners, one as a reader and one as a coach, teach them some error correction procedures, and we're going to partner students so that they have a model reader and also, right, a partner. So this grades 3 through 5, they're very social, right? And they want approval from their peers. They want to work together as they approach middle school. And so what we're going to do is strategically partner students. And again, if you need support with that, we can certainly help you if you're in Pennsylvania. But we're going to rank order our list, hopefully by your benchmark assessment. Oral reading fluency is a great way to do that. Our top reader is Josh in the class, and our most struggling reader is Ellen. And so what we're going to do is cut that list in half, and we're going to partner the top reader of the top half and the top reader of the bottom half, and those are going to be partners. So we are looking at then partnering those students so that they have a model reader. The reader 1 goes first, reader 2 then rereads the same material so that they've had multiple reads, and also coaching and feedback from their peer. And this is a great way to build in time on the page as well as fluency practice. All right, Tambra, do you want to try? She's like, no. Okay, so I think I'm going to skip this video just for time's sake. But Dr. Anita Archer talks about strategy for partnering. And if you don't want to have something as structured as the partner reading scenario I had before, you can ask students to learn this protocol called Me, We. And students can either read on their own if it's their turn to read, or they can say we, and partners then read together.
I'm going to
Okay, so that video is also in the Wakelet, and Dr. Archer shares that most often, even the good readers will say we, because they want to have someone read with them. So again, fluency is about accurately reading text with ease, expression, right? That's that prosody, and appropriate pacing. So the more fluent you are, the more likely it is that you'll comprehend the text. It's not speed reading, it's not reading fast, it's reading with enough ease that you can then put your mental effort into comprehension. So we can do these general recommendations instead of popcorn reading, right? Instead of all of those practices that aren't as equitable or participatory. We can do repeated readings with purpose, prosody instruction, and then we want to spend a lot of time in text. For secondary folks, I was just going to share that Dr. Sharon Vaughn shared with us at the summit that just 10 minutes out of a 50-minute period of time in text will make a huge difference for students. So I think that's a great goal to set, every 10 minutes of an hour. So take action. What are you thinking about? No hand raising, partner reading, me, we, all sorts of ways that we can think through getting kids miles on the page.
There we go. Perky pace here. And I was trying to get that in there. And Lindsay Kemany's session on partner reading paragraph shrinking from 2022 Literacy Symposium. I have that in there, and don't miss her sessions from yesterday too in the wrap. All right, so vocabulary, words, words, words. Students are engaged in very complex words as they move up into more complex text and more domain specific. And if here's some low-hanging fruit, please go back to your schools and implement a vocabulary instructional routine. And this routine should be the same, the structure in math and science and social studies and ELA. It will benefit your students enormously. So that's why we're sharing an explicit vocabulary routine with you, and we're sharing it in a perky pace, right? I don't know, I think it's taking you to Great Middle Schools. This comes from the Great Middle Schools site. So that's also on the Wakelet. You definitely want to be checking out that site. Lots of great resources, and this is just one of them. Of course, we're anchoring in the RAND report and the reader. What does a reader know about the words and the text that they're about to read? They must know the meanings of 95% of the words in the text they're about to read. 95% if they're going to simultaneously decode and gain meaning from the text. So it's a high bar, right? And we know as students engage in more complex text, right, that there are many words to teach. So we have to be very judicious with our choices, right? It's the most important factor after kids can read those words. If we think about the rope, I wish I could make background knowledge and vocabulary, those ropes thicker, stronger, because they have more impact on comprehension, right? And we know, as we heard before, that comprehension is not a single measure. What students have knowledge of the background about what they're going to read and the meaning of the words will impact their ability to comprehend the text, right? So it varies on a continuum based on the text, right? That's that interface. So you can only teach, we have limited time, the meaning of a few words that are essential to the passage. And this is a bit of science and art integrated, all right? So we're going to talk about what that art and science looks like. All right, so when you're thinking about teaching vocabulary words, how are you going to teach them? You're going to teach them explicitly. You're going to read the text prior, and you're going to look for 2 to 3 words that carry a lot of the meaning in the text, right? And you're going to say, these are the ones I'm going to invest the time in to teach explicitly. And you're going to create a vocabulary map for them. Always nice when you can do this too with your grade level peers. And then you use those maps for instruction. So that's the design, that's the preparation. And then delivery is, I say the word, you say the word. Oh, what is that? That's phonology. I introduce the word's meaning. Oh, it's semantics. I provide examples and non-examples. So they're student friendly. So students know the meaning of them. What is that? Oh goodness, that's semantics, right? And then I'm checking for understanding. We're integrating language. And this is the template of the map. It's on the Wakelet. It's a really nice template that puts kind of everything in one spot. We've added a little bit to it in terms of their etymology and morphology. We wanted to tweak a tiny bit, right? And so in the vocabulary maps, they have basically like a roadmap for telling you how to use the vocabulary map. Right, so they tell you when you're thinking about word selection, they're providing some guidelines. That's what Erin has kind of highlighted there in the outline of that template, that resource from Great Middle Schools. And then we've also kind of blown out or amplified the criteria from the blueprint for reading comprehension, because we do have to be judicious in selecting the words that we're going to explicitly teach. Right, those words that carry meaning, the words that suitcase words that come across, science, social studies, math, right? Those tier 2 words, if you know Beck's work. So we can't teach them all. We can use the academic word list to kind of guide us. This comes from Louisiana Believes, from a section of that text about the Dust Bowl. And they recommended that you teach 34 vocabulary words. I don't think you're going to have time to teach 34 vocabulary words, right? You're going to have to look at those words and determine which carry the meaning for your students and can be helpful to the passage comprehension, right? And when you make those selections, you're going to teach what Anita says, teach the relatives, right? So if you taught civil, why wouldn't you be teaching civilly and uncivil and civilization? Because that's how we store words and semantic maps. So you're going to be teaching, as she says, the relatives too. It'll give you the most bang for your buck. And of course, those morphemes. because they also transfer across words, right? Morphology is so important, right? And here is, how the guidelines for teaching the vocabulary map comes right from that resource. And we look here, for example, for an example for you on weariness. I say the word, you say the word. I'm going to break it down into its student-friendly definition for students. What does it mean? Say to being tired or bored, right? I'm going to break it into its morphemes, weariness, and talk about its meaningful parts. I'm going to share synonyms that my students will know, so they have something to attach it to. I'll provide a sample sentence, right, as well, so that they can get to that meaning. And then I'm going to have them talk about that word, right? That gives them rehearsal as well. And when they're talking about the word, I'm walking around, looking around, talking around to determine if students are getting the meaning of that word. And we have a nice little visual there too. So we're creating these word maps, and you can see the integration there of awesome, the phonology and the spoken word, the orthography in the written word, the semantics and syntax, its meaningful parts with morphology. So we're integrating again all of our language, because we want kids to map those words, orthographically map them and store them for instant retrieval. And we know it requires those three areas, its spoken form, its written form, and its meaning. And then lots and lots and lots of opportunities to use those words. It's just not a one and done. We're going to discuss it, we're going to write about it, and we're going to, come back to those words so that they own them. All right. And of course, we have this interconnection too between the reader and the text here when we're teaching vocabulary. Please, please, please. If one thing I could ask you to do is teach vocabulary. Everybody teach it. The routine should be the same. You don't want to add complexity by having different routines in different content areas. And so that's a recommendation. And then of course, the structure there. And then Erin, you have just a few minutes to talk about GIST. And I think for questions that we're just gonna have to go over a little bit. Sorry about that.
We were going to just put on the Wakelet as bonus content for going to the Wakelet, all of the information about GIST, and maybe we just need to do a separate session on GIST. But GIST elaborates paragraph shrinking. If you've been using partner reading paragraph shrinking, like people have been commenting in the chat, it's highly successful. And what we want to do is get students to think about the most important who or what, and that continuum of scaffolding to summary writing. So just show this little slide here, and then the same resource, the Great Middle Schools, which we know, third grade isn't typically considered middle school, but it's a great on-ramp to thinking about what students need to do. And so when we're working with second grade teachers, I shared the presentation in the chat from the Reading League Pennsylvania, highlight implementation of partner reading paragraph shrinking. Second graders are effective at doing this. 10 words or less. What's the most important who or what? And what's the most important thing about the who or what? And if we're practicing that in second grade and practicing that in third grade orally, counting on our fingers 10 words or less, then by the time that we get into fifth grade, we're able to figure out main ideas of more complex texts. So we want students to get the gist, right? Write a short, complete sentence. And then by the time that they are in secondary, we're going to then build that big gist into a summary. And what we often do is expect, right? We assign and bless, as Dr. Archer would say, and rather than teach. We really need to teach students what a summary is, how to get the gist. And the Great Middle Schools has materials for you. They have a procedure, a routine that you can use. They have a model with all the scripts available for you to get this going. So we want you to think about what you want to take away from today. If your head isn't spinning like ours is, we haven't done our job. So we will stay and take questions. We have been sharing the Wakelet. If you'd like to grab that with your device, though, we would welcome you to do that. And we are going to create, I think, the PDF for you for the slides, because we know there's a lot of content in here, and we wanted to make sure it was accessible before we shared that. So we will do that. Look for that on the slides. And if you have a specific question that you want answered privately, you can email us. We hope that we stay in contact through our socials and through Patton.